Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB Nation All-America podcast. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, our national college football writer at sportingnews.com, and the president of the Football Writers Association of America. We're coming to you live on our CFB Nation YouTube channel. Thanks to Brian Driscoll at Irish Breakdown for setting it up for us this week. If you want to subscribe, just go over to youtube.com, search CFB Nation, click subscribe, and then you're going to see all of our podcasts in video form as we go throughout the off season and then obviously through the season. So, Bill, we are coming live on Wednesday afternoon. We are going to try to do Wednesdays the rest of the off season, maybe in the morning, maybe in the afternoon, but like in this sort of window. We know the Irish Breakdown folks go live as well at 1 o'clock. And so the head-to-head competition doesn't favor us, I don't think, at least with the Irish Breakdown crowd, because they've done a great show for years and years. But we're doing what we can. How are you?
I'm doing well, and obviously a little side eye towards the TV here with the Big 12 Media Day coverage.
Big 12 Media Day coverage. I got Wimbledon on my back.
Well,
I got the hat going. I got this is the last week of Wimbledon, and I'm going to put the hat away. But next time I have a U.S. Open hat, it's going to be week 0 of the college football season.
Well, Dion will be live here in about an hour, so we'll definitely listen to what he has to say. I think he's still the main attraction of Big 12 Media Day, but it's here. I know you'll be at SEC Media Day next week, and then we'll be both at ACC kickoff here in a few weeks.
Yes, we will.
So it's exciting. That's the kind of preview to, okay, then everything else starts to happen, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, people had a lot to talk about, too. Big 12 Media Day kicked off yesterday. They have a 2-day affair, and there were some eyebrows raised with certain topics and things like that. But before we get into that, let's do some Trocchi trivia, Big 12 related. How about that? Testing your knowledge from last year. Straightforward question. I don't know if it's a straightforward answer. Can you name the team that led the Big 12 in scoring last year? And can you name the team who led the Big 12 in scoring defense last year? Big 12 in scoring and scoring defense. Top offense, top defense, and points per game last year for the Big 12. So we will revisit that at the end of the episode. And if someone wants to comment in the comment section, they can do that and spoil it for you. But that is our question for the week. All right, so Big 12 kicked off yesterday at the Dallas Cowboys practice facility, but it's more than a practice facility because there's 14,000 seats there. So some sort of big building in Frisco, Texas. Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, kicked things off, as he always does, as all the commissioners do. And you had a reaction on sportingnews.com to his comments about the league and where they fit in the college football playoff landscape.
Yeah, I mean, he came out with some takes, and, they're kind of the leadoff hitter in this thing, so he gets kind of the first crack at some things. And, I think he raised some eyebrows when he said, he expects or he anticipates they'll have 2 teams in the playoff this year, and that he favors the 5-11 model, which, as he said, he's looking long-term. He doesn't want automatic qualifiers. And again, I think that's surrendering. You're saying you're guaranteed 2, and he's gambling of sorts, but I agree with him. Like, what if there's a year where you've got 3, so I'm kind of,
I love how he slipped it in there that the ACC and the Big 12 invented the 5-11. I thought that was very funny. Yeah. It was subtle, but it was
he was jabbing at the SEC and the Big 10. And Brett's done a hell of a job preserving this league. In his 3 years, he inherited it when Texas and Oklahoma gone. But this is the paradox of what he's dealing with is when he had Texas and Oklahoma, you had 2 blue bloods that, Oklahoma more so at that point stood out as the dominant program in the conference. They don't have a dominant program. It works for TV. It's great for us. It's not great for trying to get 2 playoff teams, though. Not when you have 4 teams finish 7-2 at the top of the conference. So he did address that. He said it's critical that they have a couple programs maybe pop out. But, and watching it yesterday, and I'm sure we'll watch it again today, I don't see a program that, like, in the immediate future is going to stand out above the rest of them.
Yeah, you made a really good point, I thought, about Yormark doing a great job as he's come in. Oklahoma and Texas were on the way out. They hadn't left yet. He facilitated that exit, got them out of there so Big 12 could move forward, which was smart. And, these disruptor things, he talks a lot big game and all this stuff. And usually I'm turned off by stuff like that. But what he has done and where the league is a credit to him. And it is an entertaining league. Some of the coaches yesterday made an interesting point about all of the returning quarterbacks that this league has. And they are catching attention of the NFL scouts, not any like slam dunk guys necessarily, but your Rocco Becht, your Avery Johnson, Sam Levitt is pretty much an NFL guy, but beyond that, there's other guys, and I'm sure they had offers to go other places, but they came back. They stayed in the Big 12, and that speaks well of the Big 12 as well. So in a the Big 12 and the Pac-12 a few years ago were on shaky ground. One survived and one didn't, and so you got to give Yormark credit for that.
Yeah, and obviously, I think for this conference, it's just that walking that tightrope between having the parity that they have and the entertainment value that they have and 4 or 5 ranked teams. And you mentioned the quarterbacks. I mean, yeah, we were on top of that when we did our Big 12 quarterback rankings. I mean, Shedeur led the conference in passing last year, passing yards. The next 10 guys are back. So, yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, like whether it's Josh Hoover at TCU or Sawyer Robertson, who has created a little bit of a stir. He played really well at the end of last season. Baron Morton spoke with the media yesterday, and all I heard out of his mouth was, "Yes, sir." Most polite quarterback possible. And, obviously could play. So, yeah.
This is from Pete Thamel's story about he talks to NFL scouts and all that. So Sam Levitt, we talked about Arizona State, is definitely a slam dunk kind of guy heading into the season. But these 6 QBs are also kind of on the radar for these scouts. Baylor with Sawyer Robertson, Brendan Sorsby of Cincinnati. And then we talked about Rocco Becht, Iowa State, Avery Johnson, Kansas State, Josh Hoover, you just mentioned TCU, and then Baron Morton, Texas Tech. That's a really strong quarterback league.
For sure. And a lot of experience. And that means that this league is probably going to shake out the same, that they're going to have a lot of close games and quarterback play is going to dictate that. You're going to have some shootouts and probably some 38-31 type games. One of the stats Brett Yormark said yesterday that stood out with me is he said, they had the most fourth quarter lead changes and most go-ahead touchdowns in the final minute of games last year. Now, how do I go and research that? I might take a minute, but I mean,
I believe it though. I mean,
yeah, it shakes out. Yeah, they had a lot of exciting games. And, one of the things that's been emphasized here is they've got a lot, and it's on my TV right now, the can't miss non-conference games. The Georgia Tech versus Colorado, Baylor versus Auburn, North Carolina versus TCU. I mean, might not, when we were talking about week 1, they're not on the radar as these like, oh my gosh, I can't miss games, but they're key ones for this conference. Arizona State plays Mississippi State earlier. So they do have a lot of opportunities to increase that profile and do what Brett wants and get that second playoff team. I just think it's an uphill battle because when I wrote that column yesterday, Arizona State finished 12th in the rankings last year. Yeah, they got the bye, and yeah, they played Texas great. 4th down pass away from winning the game that you were at, but they finished 12th. And the Big 12 only had 3 teams ranked in the final college football playoff ranking top 25. So it's still a battle to get respect with the other 3 conferences.
So, yeah, you can't have a 4-way tie for first either. Yeah, that's just, you're eating your own at that point, and that's the tough way to get a second team in. So I want to let's shift gears, talk about Scott Frost, who is back in the Big 12, first year back at UCF, who wasn't in the Big 12 when he left. And Scott Frost played in the Big 12, right? But coached at Nebraska in the Big 10. So it's just the nature of college football. hard to get all the history straight with all the realignment and everything like that. But anyway, Scott Frost, this was not at the podium. This was to the Athletic privately, that they ran this story on Frost coming back to UCF, and his quote, which kind of raised some eyebrows, like we like to say. It was, I didn't want to leave UCF. I always said I would never leave unless it was someplace you could go and potentially win a national championship. I got tugged in a direction to go try to help my alma mater, and I didn't really want to do it. It wasn't a good move. I'm lucky to get back to a place where I was a lot happier. How do you think the Nebraska folks took that comment?
Not well, but I mean, it's loaded, but that's kind of what he did. You know, he tried to resurrect Nebraska, the prodigal son thing. And, you know, there were moments they just lost a lot of close games, and it's a what if. I mean, had he stayed at UCF, he had them humming, you know, coming off they claimed a national title. I mean, he had it where he wanted it. And now that he can come back to that job and try to get him going in the Big 12 is really interesting to me. I didn't take much from it, though. I mean, at least he's being honest. He could have lied around it and said, yeah, you know, Nebraska just didn't work out. I learned a lot and gave us
that's what he did from the podium. Yeah,
right.
He tried to keep the focus on UCF when he was at the podium, but
he's dry. He's always been dry on the podium. He was at Nebraska. He very straightforward. He was when he was Oregon's offensive coordinator. I still remember listening to him before they played Florida State in the Rose Bowl in the very first playoff year. So it doesn't contact everybody, doesn't resonate with everybody, but I think he'll do a nice job at UCF. He's one. And then obviously Rich Rodriguez with West Virginia, the other guy that's back. But as far as those comments, yeah, he probably didn't have to say that, but the honesty value is there. And I actually think Nebraska fans probably take offense to it a little bit, but they're cool with the guy they have right now. So that makes it a little bit easier. I think they're good with Matt Rule and what he's done the last 2 years, which has advanced them a little farther than Scott Frost could.
I mean, I don't think he didn't want to go to Nebraska. That might be a little revisionist history. He wanted to stay at UCF, but he was going to turn down Nebraska. I think he believed in himself. I think he believed he could turn Nebraska around, and what better place to do was his alma mater. So to say he didn't want to leave might not totally be the truth. Little revisionist history, I think, there. But I didn't like the hire for UCF. Frost proved he was not ready to coach at that level. He went 16-31 at Nebraska. Like you said, they lost a lot of close games, and they lost them due to poor special teams, poor execution. You know, it wasn't just simply not being good enough. You know what I mean? It was more along the lines of just not a well-coached team. A lot of self-inflicted problems, a lot of punt returns and fumbles and things like that. So anyway, just wanted to touch on that. I don't know what he's going to do. We'll see. I'm not overly optimistic. The UCF he left is now in a lot different situation in the Big 12. They have struggled with the transition. They're not nearly as strong as they were when he left. So we'll see. All right. One more thing about yesterday's Big 12 Media Days was Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports wrote about the coaches. He's quoted several coaches, I think from the podium probably, but on this new salary cap and the problem of teams already trying to circumvent this $20.5 million cap that they are supposed to operate within. Now, the new rules went into effect July 1st. Coaches were complaining about it July 8th, saying they don't know the rules. They feel like people are offering more money. There's no penalties in place for exceeding the cap. It just seems like we're not ready for this system that everyone knew was coming on July 1st. The system is still not ready to be executed.
Yeah. We'll see. There's going to be more stories like this. They just didn't have a complete financial system in place that's consistent, and college football has never been consistent in this regard. You brought up the issue of, okay, well, are there going to be guys that get basically payments off the books now? Probably. I
Probably.
mean, and
The bag man returns.
yeah.
For
And
4 years, the bag man was over the table. Now it's going to go back under the table, and people are going to exceed the cap. There's not even a penalty. We don't even know what the cap,
right.
penalty is for exceeding the cap.
So I hope it is just, another step towards something that's more uniform and consistent, and maybe a salary cap of sorts that they can't avoid. But, I mean, what did the other thing Scott Frost said that got less run yesterday is the game's settled on the field, but, right now it's being settled with bank accounts. This is the product we wanted.
Shots fired at Texas Tech.
I mean, it's probably fired at everybody because this is the game that we're playing now. And everybody can say, well, you got to learn how to play by these rules of engagement now. But that's a fact I've said for years that it reminds me more of Major League Baseball, which I probably don't follow as close as I used to. But, the big market teams are going to get the big market players, and maybe
some of college football's history for 50 years. So,
but I think the gaps are going to be worse in 5 years because I think, Ohio State can afford to do this. Georgia can afford to do this. Purdue can't afford to do it this way. Probably UCF can't afford to do it this way. So, the whole developing 3-star program thing, we'll see. I could be wrong, but I watched TCU in Georgia a couple years ago. And I think that's my point. It's like you're not going to get the 3-star little engine that might make a run, but at the end of the day, when they play that, they're going to get beat. And I think that's going to get worse now that we're paying, and then we have an NIL clearinghouse, and then we're going to have payments behind that. And then I think it'll have trickle up effects to the NFL that the NFL isn't going to like.
And so here's my question. Here's my above the table question. You get $20.5 million. Let's say Texas decides we're going to give $15 million to the football team. Can they give Arch Manning 0? And then Nike signs Arch Manning to a legit NIL deal. And he's a big enough name. He could get $5 million from Nike as a spokesperson. And that doesn't count against the Texas cap. Is that
right?
How you understand it?
Yeah, well, and there was some talk of Jeremiah Smith has a deal with Adidas, but Ohio State is Nike. So some of that's going on too, like the brand loyalty thing. Like you've got a NIL deal with, I mean, I'm curious to see, is he going to be wearing Adidas shoes when they play Texas?
Right.
So these things are also another snag in this that I think some schools didn't foresee. And I mean,
Nike, I'm not happy about that.
No, because I mean, that's entirely possible. So
you cut Ohio State a big check. That's for all the players.
And again, wait till this gets in the way. So yeah, there's a lot of snags, but it's just not a uniform financial system. I think coaches are complaining. Coaches are always going to complain about this. And I don't think even if we had a perfect system that was buttoned up and everybody logged everything that they did, we'd still find something to complain about. But this is what we opened the door for. I've been pretty consistent. I'm good with players getting paid. I've always said that. But if you didn't anticipate a mess, and if I know there's been a lot written that, oh yeah, the talent's getting dispersed, but that high end talent's still going to go to the same places.
Speaking of Arch, let's talk a little SEC Media Days. They kick off next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a 4-day extravaganza in the city of Atlanta, while Atlanta is going to be hosting the MLB All-Star Game on the draft, the Home Run Derby, the All-Star Game on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So there's going to be an overlap of 2 days. I don't know if some of the SEC football media people will make it out to Truist Park and see some of the All-Star festivities as well at night. We'll see. It's going to be a fun trip for some people. Anyway, I'm going to try to balance a little bit, but I'll make the SEC Media Days on Wednesday. I think Arch is Tuesday, and he is going to appear at the College Football Hall of Fame, which is where the Media Day was for the Peach Bowl last year, and he was made available for that, and he was very patient. I was there at that, and it wasn't totally swarmed, but definitely had a lot of attention for a backup quarterback. You're of the opinion that Arch could be the superstar that the SEC needs. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I mean, college football hasn't had a real celebrity, like a real one, like that people that aren't college football fans pay attention
Well,
to.
Deion was a coach, but he
Yeah,
kind of crossed over a little bit.
Deion, Shador, Travis Hunter kind of did,
Hmm.
and we'll see how that. I'm writing about that today. About are we still paying attention? Year 3, are we?
Maybe.
Maybe. One interesting thing about that I did dig up that I can give from the column is his first year he had 6 games that were in the top 50 most watched games of the year. Last year they had 3. 7 of those 9 games have been in September. So we'll see if they can hold our attention past September this year. I think the week 1 game will do well against Georgia Tech. But to your point, yeah, they did. But like a singular celebrity, Shador's probably close, but we haven't had like a Manziel. We haven't had like a Tebow. I mean, I remember Johnny Manziel's scrum at SEC Media Day. I wasn't there, but I saw the pictures. It was absurd. Like you can judge when you go to these media days. Okay, what's the scrum look like? His was Tebow's. Jadeveon Clowney's was huge. Jameis Winston's was huge. And I've gone to Big Ten for years. I mean, yeah, they have a lot of Ohio State guys. They typically have huge scrums, but they have a huge beat. There hadn't been anybody since Manziel that had that kind of like everybody was there. And, I think Arch will have that, if not this year, then next. As you mentioned, like we were talking about, I think I'm of the opinion that he'll probably, with nothing, this is pure speculation, I think he'll stay both years. And I think there is the potential for him to be that celebrity. The last name contributes, the ability contributes, playing at Texas contributes, that he could be, everybody's following him. The appetite's high. It's kind of like, but personality-wise, I'd say he'd be something in between Tebow, who was the Christian, good guy, polarizing, and Manziel, who was he was the last polarizing guy to me, even more than Shador. Like, Bill, I always tell the story. When they played Alabama the second time, when he was at A&M, not the first time, the second time, there were people rooting for Alabama that had nothing to do with Alabama because they hated Johnny Manziel. I think Arch could have that kind of impact, and we'll see it right away in week 1. But that's kind of my theory. We'll probably write about it next week. We'll see what that scrum looks like. I could be way off, but I don't think I am.
Can he handle it? Is he ready? I think so. That seems to be the general consensus, but I wanted to see what you thought.
I think he's got a little Eli in him, just in the limited interactions we've seen with him. He seems to be kind of fun, has that Manning sense of humor. That'll go a long way. Peyton was so likable. Eli handled the New York media. He was probably less likable than Peyton when he played, but they're equally likable now. I mean, the Manning cast, we know the popularity there. And I think Arch has a little bit of that in him. So, yes, I do. I mean, if there's somebody built to handle it, it's probably him. There will be a lot of attention. Just because that, like I said, that appetite for him, you and I joked about it all last season. I mean, you were one of those guys that wanted to see more of him, even when he was playing behind Quinn Ewers. But now we get to see it, and we get to see it on the biggest stage possible in week 1 in Columbus at noon. If he wins that game, I mean, good luck holding down the hype there, because the last guy I've seen I think the last 2 non-con guys to go into Ohio State and win, one was Anthony Brown in Oregon. The guy before that, though, in a non-conference game was Baker Mayfield. So, and Baker used that to win the Heisman Trophy that year.
If Arch goes in and lights up Ohio State, he will be 1-1 on every mock draft on Sunday morning. So I don't know if he'll be able to wait it out to 2027. We'll see about that. What do you think about Alabama? I think they are another big story heading into this season. Kalen DeBoer, if he goes 9-4 again, is that the end of Kalen DeBoer?
I don't know. And I mean, I really think his honeymoon ended when they lost to your Commodores. Like that was it. Like Nick Saban didn't do those things. They played very poorly on the road last year. And there was some inconsistencies. That said, I've gone through this exercise a few times. I said, if I had to pick, I had to stop at every team I actually think that can win the national championship, and I had to be right, but it was the fewest numbers possible you could do. So like you keep going. So I'm like Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Penn State, Clemson, Notre Dame. I think I would go Alabama next, and then I said I can stop. They're the last team I would put in there. Maybe LSU and go 8. But Alabama, the talent around Ty Simpson's there. I think Ty Simpson's one of the most intriguing quarterbacks in the country because he gets to throw to Jeremy Bernard, gets to throw to Ryan Williams, who we've talked so much about Jeremiah Smith this offseason. We forgot Ryan Williams is pretty good too. And, is their defense better in year 2? So if they go 9-4 again, yes, there'll be issues. But, right out of the get-go, they play Florida State, and they can turn that narrative. So Kalen,
September's got Florida State, Wisconsin, and Georgia.
Yeah.
Two of those on the road. Florida State on the road, Georgia on the road. September, not easy. And then later on in November, back-to-back weeks, LSU and Oklahoma, who should be better. And then don't forget, October features Tennessee. So
I think they're at least 9-3 against the schedule, though.
There's some landmines in there for sure. Yeah.
If they lose to Florida State, we're going to have to do an entire podcast on that because it'll be, the temperature will turn up.
The panic bowl, whoever loses is panicking, either fan base. They don't want to.
I think our good friend Ralph Russo at The Athletic coined that the anxiety bowl, which is the same thing, right? Anxiety, panic, whatever. And he called that out like last January. So it is. And I think, and you're going to go, so you'll, and I think you've been there. I went there several times when Saban was there. Nick Saban was the story of SEC Media Day every year. That was the difference. I remember going into the hotel in Hoover the one year, there were hundreds of Alabama fans waiting for him to arrive to look at him, like for like a minute. And I was like, that doesn't happen at Big Ten Media Day ever. Like there's nobody waiting outside Lucas Oil to even look at Ryan Day like that never happened. So I was like, what is going on? I mean, and then he controlled the temperature of his, speech and the questions he got. And he always had a message he wanted to send about something. Great politician. That's why he should be commissioner. He would say something about the transfer portal because that was what he would hone in on that everybody would write about. So I don't know that SEC Media Day has that guy anymore.
Well, I think they do. And I think it's Greg Sankey.
There you go.
I think Sankey's statement will be picked apart and analyzed and written about, and he's taken on the role of messenger from Saban.
Fair. And that's a good point. That's a great point, actually, that Kirby's not like that. Kirby's not like Kirby.
He's a ball coach, man.
He just wants to coach football. If you told Kirby Smart, hey, you don't have to do media availability this year, I don't think he would worry. He'd be like, you'd have to get his message out a little bit, but he'd be okay with that. Sankey is the one because he will be second. He's in between the ACC and the Big Ten commissioners talking. It's his first appearance really since everything we wrote about the playoff stuff he was talking about a month ago in Destin, which I don't think went well for him.
He'll go 5'11". He'll get tons of questions on that. Whatever he says is going to be front page news, no doubt about it.
Correct. And we'll probably have to, see if he backtracks, or does he start promoting 5'11"? Because then if Yormark and him are doing it, then it puts the pressure on Petiti, who I would just say will go along, or, Phillips, who could throw a curveball and be like, no, we want to blow this whole thing up and do it our way. And that's what we'll write about. But you're right. Greg Sankey is the largest voice in the conference right now. And you know what it misses? I was talking about this with one of the lacrosse dads last night at practice, who's a Georgia fan, Gaston White. I said they don't have over the years they had, Les Miles and Spurrier and Mike Leach and Bielema. And I'm trying to figure out who that, it's kind of Lane, but Lane's better on social media than he is on the podium. So who's that guy that's going to, Ed Orgeron, he was great in these things. Like, who's the guy that's going to keep the media?
Drinkwitz tries to.
He tries, but, and I think Shane Beamer tries.
Yeah.
But, who's that guy that's maybe going to carry SEC Media Day with a little bit of humor? which, we've had several of those years. Maybe it's one of those two, but I'm trying to think if anybody else could do it. I mean, unless like Brian Kelly came out and just firing some jokes out there, but I don't see that happening either.
Those usually land kind of flat.
Correct.
So, all right, well, good. Yeah, I can't wait for to get down to SEC Media Days. I'll let you know how it is. Maybe we'll have a guest down there. That day I'm going to be there is Wednesday, so I might be able to set up from the hotel after Alabama's session, before Oklahoma's session at lunchtime. We'll try to do it around this window, and we can chat SEC, and we can see what Dion has to say later. We can review that, and of course we can preview Big Ten Media Days, which is the following week, going head to head with the ACC. So, and then talking season will be over, and actual season will be just around the corner. So, all right, let's get back to the Trocchi trivia question and see if you can nail it. Can you name the team who was the highest scoring and the highest in scoring defense last year in the Big 12?
I'm going to guess Iowa State on defense. They got to be close.
The leader in scoring defense last year in the Big 12 was BYU. They tied for first at 7-2. They gave up 19.6, but the interesting thing is the second in scoring defense was Utah.
Okay.
Who finished tied for 13th in the league.
Well, I think Iowa State, I would like to know what their number was if you take off how many they gave up to Arizona State. Because they were probably, until they played in that game, then got lit up, right? I'll go back and look that up.
Scoring defense for Iowa State, they were actually tied for fourth.
Gross.
In the league.
It's
interesting that Utah was second, and Houston, who was also at the bottom of the conference, was tied for fourth.
So I would guess on offense, I'm trying to think if somebody like just put a huge number up on somebody, which I mean, like Texas Tech.
You are correct.
Yeah, that's always the easy. They score a ton every year. Good. Well, I feel better now.
37.6 points a game. Baylor was second at 34.4. Then it went TCU, and then Arizona State and Colorado tied for fourth.
Baylor was going to be my second guess. So I'm glad I got that part right.
There you go.
I know
that part.
Those Texas schools always leading the scoring. So yeah,
that's old school Texas Tech right there.
Yeah, they typically do that.
So anyway, all right. Well, that was good. That was fun. Thank you to everyone for listening to the CFB Nation All-America podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, for watching on the YouTube channel, CFB Nation YouTube channel. Thank you to Irish Breakdown, your source for Notre Dame football information. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you soon.